بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another episode in the series on Al-Qawaid al-Fiqhiyya, Islamic Legal Maxims. We've now reached maxims which are considered the minor maxims. Previously we talked about the 5 major maxims and their corollaries, and these maxims that we're talking about now are considered independent maxims. They don't necessarily cover as wide a range of issues as those major maxims, but they still have relevance to many different fiqh chapters. So today's episode will be about the maxim التصرف على الرعية منوط بالمصلحة. Acts of those with authority over people must take into account the interests of the people. So this maxim relates obviously to public service, politics, management, organization from a Sharia point of view, most particularly organizing and managing the state. But it also provides guidance for any party that's responsible for managing the affairs of some other party, in whole or in part. And so what it's saying is that anyone who is in that position where they're acting as an agent, they have authority to take decisions that will affect another person or people in general, that the basis for their decisions should be the benefit of those people on whose behalf they are acting. And this concept, there's a famous quote from Umar ibn al-Khattab when he was the ruler of the Islamic State, which is one of the sources for this principle. He said, "I consider myself with regard to the wealth of Allah, that is, public funds, as having the same status as the guardian of an orphan. If I have a personal need, I take from it. Then when my financial situation eases, I return it. And if I'm not in need, I refrain altogether." Of course, at a certain point in the history of the Muslims, this attitude was completely replaced by the sense on the part of the rulers that whatever's in the public treasury belongs to me. So when that happens, then disorder becomes the order of the day. Bad things start happening in the state because money that's supposed to go to public uses doesn't get there. So public needs go unfulfilled. And not the needs, the wants and whims of a minority become the basis on which wealth is not just used but squandered. And Umar ibn al-Khattab's statement is probably the inspiration for a statement made by Imam al-Shafi'i, which is related to this maxim. He said, "Manzilatul imam min al-ra'iyati manzilatul wali min al-yatim." The status of the ruler with regard to the subject, or the citizens, is like the status of the guardian of an orphan. And Imam al-Subki, he took that statement of Imam al-Shafi'i and then he broadened it. He said, كل متصرف عن الغير فعليه أن يتصرف بالمصلحة. Anyone who acts on behalf of another should act based on the rules of maslaha, benefit. Now, if we look at the components that comprise the wording of the maxim, ra'iyya is a noun derived from the verb ra'a, yar'a, with an ayn, which as a verb it means to graze. So, who grazes? Sheep and animals. And because sheep in particular need someone to look after them while they're grazing, then a derived meaning of yar'a means to tend, to look after, particularly in the context of a flock of animals. So a ra'i is a shepherd. So ra'iyya literally means a herd of sheep or any kind of a grazing animal. And then a derived meaning from that is the citizens. In modern terms, we call them citizens. In earlier days, they called them subjects of a ruler. So the connection between the herd or the flock of sheep and the citizens is that the ruler is supposed to look after the interests and to protect and care for and defend those subjects or those citizens, just as a shepherd looks after the sheep that he's tending. And you have those terms explicitly mentioned in that hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said, كُلُّكُمْ رَاءٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. Every one of you is a shepherd, and every one of you is accountable or will be asked about that which is in his care. And so the first person that he mentioned with regard to that principle is the ruler. He said that the ruler is responsible for the citizens, and he'll be asked about how he dealt with them. Another key word in the maxim is tasarruf. Tasarruf is this really great Arabic word. There's not a really perfect English translation of it. The verb tasarrafa yatasarrifu means to act independently, to dispose freely, to administer, and it has that sense of the freedom to act. And so tasarruf is free disposal or administration. In a more general sense, it can just mean action or conduct or behavior. And so then the overall meaning of the maxim is that those who have authority over others, whether it's public or private, their actions and decisions should create benefit for those in their care and secure their best interests. And as we've mentioned before, there are two types of authority. One is public authority and one is private. So public authority would involve the ruler of a country, the governors of states, the ministers of parliament, cabinet ministers, judges, the police, tax officials, and in an Islamic country, even the imam of a masjid has a certain amount of authority, even though in many places that's kind of eroded, particularly like you see in the Khalij where imams are imported from poor countries. So the imam is looked upon by the people who come to the mosque as a lowly servant. I remember hearing about a Bedouin who came into a mosque in Saudi Arabia, and the Jamaat was finished. And he told the imam, who was still there, he said, "Stand up and lead me in salat," which indicates, the ignorance of that Bedouin, because, once he's prayed, he's not supposed to pray the fard salat twice. Although, I guess conceivably he could construe it as praying nafil salat. But anyway, that attitude that the imam of a masjid somehow has authority has been eroded in the current climate in many countries. But in some countries they still have that sense that this person has a certain amount of decision-making power about what goes on in that mosque. So those are examples of public authority. Private authority is authority which allows the holder to dispose of an asset or manage the affairs of another person. And examples of people who have that kind of authority are the manager of a waqf, the guardian of an orphan or a child. A parent is considered a guardian in that sense also. The executor of an estate, and an agent who's appointed by somebody to do something on his behalf. And so a major area in which private authority is exercised is transaction, undertaking contracts on behalf of some other person. And some holders of private authority can do that without seeking the permission of the person on whose behalf they're undertaking that contract, like the guardian of an orphan or a child. We're going to take a break, inshallah, we'll be back.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول حي على لا
Say indeed my prayers, my sacrifice, my life and my death are all for Allah, sustainer of the world.
الداعي Dynamic
I challenge any human being to point out a single fundamental of Islam
In youthful quest,
which is against humanity as a whole.
iconic, inspiring, encouraging.
Don't judge Islam based on the following.
Tariq Naik,
Judge Islam based on the authentic sources, that is the glorious Quran and the authentic Hadith.
son of the world-famous orator on Islam and comparative religion, Dr. Zakir Naik.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us an opportunity to do a proper job and to earn a proper reward.
A star above par in Teens Star. Next on Peace TV.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome back. We're talking about people who exercise private authority and what that entails. We said that one of the major areas in which exercise that authority is in undertaking contracts on behalf of some other person. In some cases, that may be done without needing to seek the permission of that person on whose behalf they're undertaking the contract. An example of that is the guardian of a child or the guardian of an orphan. But if somebody has appointed a person as his agent, then when he does so, he may give him some kind of a blanket authority where he doesn't have to refer back to him for individual decisions, or he may give him some more limited authority, and based upon the limitations, the agent may have to come back and ask permission from the principal regarding particular transactions. Another area with regard to the guardian of a child, orphan, would be looking after their education. So those kind of decisions would be made by the guardian. Now, if we look at conditions for someone exercising authority over a Muslim, in classical fiqh, where Muslims ruled lands in which they lived and other people lived also, became a given or a hallmark assumption in those contexts that the only person that's allowed to exercise authority over a Muslim is another Muslim. In the world in which we live now, 1/4 to 1/3, or possibly more, of all the Muslims in the world, they live as minorities in non-Muslim lands. So people who live in those situations, and this rule is not going to apply to you. In one way or another, you're going to find situations in which a non-Muslim exercises authority over you. So that's just the way it is. You're going to have to accept that. If you don't accept that, you have to get up and leave, go to some other country. But then you will be a stranger in that land. The situation in the Muslim world now is that if you go to some other country, then you have to apply for a visa and iqama just because you say, I want to move to your land because this is a Muslim land. They don't care. They don't want to hear that. So, if your papers aren't in order, go back where you came from. So, this is the situation in which we live, and you have to play it as it lays. So, that classical aspect of fiqh will not necessarily apply to every Muslim. There are many people that it's not going to apply to. The other characteristics that are mentioned in classical fiqh for a person to exercise authority over a Muslim, the exerciser of authority should have attained puberty. Now, in our context, it would be unthinkable that, like a boy, would exercise authority over men. But in the context of Arabia in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, he appointed Osama bin Zayd to lead an army. He was 16 years old, and people that were also in that scheduled to go out in that expedition included Umar ibn al-Khattab and other senior Sahaba. So that's one of those kind of issues that could alter based on custom. In those days, you're 16 years old, you're a man. And in our time, a 16-year-old probably is still living at home He hasn't ever worked, hasn't paid bills, so he's not capable of exercising authority over his own life, so how could he exercise over another? Another characteristic that's required, which was required then, is required now, is sanity. If you're insane, you shouldn't be looking after other people's affairs because you're not capable of taking care of yourself. Independence. What that means is that, in the context of classical fiqh, it meant that a slave shouldn't be ruling others because he's not independent. He can't take his own judgment. He has to refer back to somebody else. And in the classical context also, and this should still apply today, however, unfortunately, this is pretty much ignored, that a person exercising authority should know what are the Sharia rules related to this area that I'm supposed to be acting in. So if you don't know what the rules are, then for sure you're more likely than not to violate those rules. And this principle that keeps coming up, the Sharia is there to protect people's interests. So when you violate the rules of the Sharia, you end up creating mafsada. Instead of benefit, maslaha, you create disorder, mafsada, harm, damage, chaos. And then one other aspect that gives a further dimension to that understanding of the Sharia rules is that the person exercising that authority should not only know the rules, but understand the objective for which those rules were put in place. Now, the second condition is something that everybody should be able to agree upon in theory, except tyrants and criminals. The second condition is that the actions and decisions of the authority should bring benefit to those who are under that authority. So the Sharia has given persons in position of authority that right to exercise authority in order to fulfill these objectives. If they don't do so, then they have betrayed the trust, because the position that they're holding is a trust position. What about authority for this maxim? We already mentioned that famous hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. We also have certain Quranic verses that reflect this outlook. Prophet Shu'aib, he tells his people, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وما أريد أن أخالفكم إلى ما أنهاكم عنه إن أريد إلا الإصلاح ما استطعت وما توفيقي إلا بالله عليه توكلت وإليه أنيب. I don't desire to act contrary to what I admonish you. I'm not telling you one thing and doing something else on my own. He goes on to say, I desire nothing but to set things right as far as I can. So, al-islah, and putting things in order, making sure that they work properly, that things are running well. And that's in all aspects of life, the spiritual as well as the material. Obviously, the focus of the prophets is that spiritual well-being. And with regard to the mention of what Umar radiallahu anh mentioned, what we quoted at the beginning of the lesson, let's just read the English translation of this verse because it's rather lengthy in the interest of time. Test orphans until they reach the age of marriage, and then if you find them mature of mind, hand over to them their property. And do not consume it by spending extravagantly or in haste, fearing that they would grow up and claim it. If the guardian of the orphan is rich, let him abstain entirely from his ward's property. And if he is poor, let him partake of it in a fair measure. And there's more to the verse. That's the most relevant part. So that's what Omar was referring to when he said, I consider myself like the guardian of an orphan with regard to public wealth. In another verse, Allah admonishes guardians, adults, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا مَالَ الْيَتِيمِ إِلَّا بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ حَتَّى يَبْلُغَ أَشُدَّهُ. Do not go near the orphan's property except in the best manner until he reaches the age of maturity. So whatever the guardian does with the orphan's wealth, it should be to preserve it, increase it, protect it. And then the Prophet ﷺ, in a number of hadiths, various wordings, he said that if Allah gives authority to somebody over people and is not sincere in looking out for their best interests, he will not smell the fragrance of paradise. Now, these kinds of hadiths have to always be understood in light of all the general evidence. Doesn't mean that that person will never enter paradise. If he's a Muslim and he dies as a Muslim, even though he was crooked and a tyrant or whatever, the fact that he's a Muslim means that he will eventually enter paradise. But what this means is that he would not enter paradise from the beginning at the day of judgment. He would have to go through some purification in hellfire. And there's some other possible explanations of it, but in the interest of time, let's move on. Some applications of this in fiqh: if there are a number of persons who are eligible to be the guardian of an orphan, a judge should choose the person who is most capable of handling the affairs of the orphan and is most affectionate with the orphan. That combination of capability and affection, they should be the criteria by which the judge decides who should undertake that responsibility. Another example, if an agent, he sells a good on behalf of a principal at lower than the market price. By doing so, he's actually not looked out for the interests of his principal, and therefore he is liable to pay the difference to the principal because he has violated the trust. Also, it's not permissible for the authorities to appoint a person who is unqualified to hold any public office, whether it's a judge or any office. If the person's not qualified, he shouldn't be in that position because he will not be fulfilling the interests of people. And even like the imam of a masjid, if there's two candidates, the more qualified candidate should be chosen. If we look at the Baytul Mal in classical times, in the era of the Sahaba, the public treasury would pay out money to the citizens. One of the uses of tax money was stipends to people. So in that situation, the neediest persons should be given priority because of this concept of taking consideration of need of those who are being looked after. We've come to the end of our time. Jazakumullah khair for your attendance. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Wallahu a'lam.
إلهي أنت ربي ذو الجلال علمت بما نويت بلا جدال إلهي قد أتيتك فاعف عني وهذا ذل يغني عن سؤال
Peace TV Network, the solution for humanity. Peace TV English, the solution for humanity.
Inshallah, I will sing a song on the theme of this conference, whose script has been written by my mother. Alhamdulillah, this conference, the third of its kind, is an achievement in itself. Whether it will be a milestone in the Islamic world will depend upon the reform, the revolution it will bring, inshallah. As for now, it is amazing to see all these brothers and sisters all gather for one cause. This adornment, this breathtaking beauty of Islam, humble us to prostrate, to bow down to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has chosen us to complete this task of spreading peace. هذا من فضل ربي هذا من فضل ربي هذا من فضل ربي هذا من فضل ربي. We will spread the light, we will give the message to one and all, from President Obama to Queen Elizabeth, from Nicolas Sarkozy in France to the President of China, Ho Jintao, and we will spread peace across the globe, inshallah. All the efforts put in, time, money spent, all of it can go in vain if there is no change. So let there be a true change, so we'll get a lot of gain. This conference must stand, inshallah. It will open the shutters of our hearts and souls, give us the true joy, the true understanding of our deen. Where hearts are touched, minds are moved, souls are stirred, lives are changed, and peace prevails, inshallah. Our aim is peace, our goal is peace, our objective is peace. Our way is peace, our dream is peace, our mission is peace, our vision is peace. We love peace, and inshallah, we will attain peace. Our aim is peace, our goal is peace, our objective is peace, our way is peace, our dream is peace, our mission is peace, our vision is peace. We love peace, and inshallah, we will attain peace. In this conference, we have the scholars, the best talents of our time, all gathered for one cause. This embellishment, this heart-throbbing beauty of Islam, humble us to prostrate, to bow down to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has chosen us to complete this task of spreading peace. هذا من فضل ربي هذا من فضل ربي هذا من فضل ربي هذا من فضل ربي. Let's make the most now. Let's imbibe what they teach. Let's learn what they preach, so Jannah we can reach. Inshallah we will, inshallah we should, inshallah we must attain peace. Because our aim is peace, our goal is peace, our objective is peace, our way is peace, our dream is peace, our mission is peace, our vision is peace. We love peace, and inshallah we will attain peace. Our aim is peace, our goal is peace, our objective is peace, our way is peace, our dream is peace, our mission is peace, our vision is peace. We love peace, and inshallah we will attain peace. The Muslim world today is at a crossroad. In one direction lies imminent destruction, in the other lies authority and exalted possession. Promised by Allah for the believers, the choice is yours, the choice is ours. Decide now, decide today, before you regret. Let's visualize a destination as paradise is our aspiration. Let's strive for peace, because our aim is peace, our goal is peace, our objective is peace, our way is peace, our dream is peace, our mission is peace, our vision is peace. We love peace, and inshallah we will attain peace. Our aim is peace, our goal is peace, our objective is peace, our way is peace, our dream is peace, our mission is peace, our vision is peace. We love peace, and inshallah we will attain peace. هذا من فضل ربي 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 هذا من فضل ربي. إن الدين عند الله الإسلام إن الدين عند الله الإسلام إن الدين عند الله الإسلام.